So it looks like we're ready to get started. Hi, and welcome to the first applicant webinar about CLIR's recently redesigned Digitizing Hidden Special Collections and Archives program. I'm Becca Kwan, a member of the CLIR grants team. You'll see Olive there behind me. And we're so glad to be introducing you to the Amplifying Unheard Voices program. We're going to share some information today about the currently open call. So we'll get started with introductions. So first, we want to introduce you to our webinar platform, share some notes about how you can use Zoom during this session. A live transcript is being generated if you'd like to utilize it. To turn on this feature, click the CC Live Transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Because there are so many of you with us today, which we're so excited about, attendees will be muted throughout the presentation. However, you're welcome to use the chat for these general introductions and conversations. And if you're not seeing the chat box, you can hover your mouse towards the bottom of the screen and open it manually. In order to send a message to everyone, remember you'll need to change the default from all panelists to all panelists and attendees. Because of how busy chat can get, we ask that you use the separate Q&A box to answer questions today, which can be opened in the same way as the chat box. You can submit questions at any point during the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. If you're following along with questions as they're submitted, you can upvote them if they're similar to your own to let us know it would be helpful to you to have them answered live. If we don't get to all of the questions in time today, we'll write up some responses to the ones that are left and post all of the answers within the next few days, along with the session transcript and slides. These will all be on the Apply for an Award page by the end of the week, so check there. And now Sharon will get us going.
For those unfamiliar with our organization, the Council on Library Information Resources, or CLIR, is an independent nonprofit organization with a mission to forge strategies to enhance research, teaching, and learning environments in collaboration with libraries, cultural institutions, and communities of higher learning. Although we're talking about a funding opportunity today, it's important to understand that CLIR is not actually a funding agency. Rather, our programs and publications are supported through sponsorships and external funding. For the Digitizing Hidden Special Collections and Archives program, we receive our funding from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, and CLIR acts as the regranting agency. And just as we receive proposals and reports from grant recipients, we also send proposals and reports to Mellon and other funding organizations. CLIR's work is accomplished by a relatively small staff of about 20 geographically distributed individuals, with the greatest concentration living in the DC area, where our headquarters are located. Today's webinar is led by the CLIR's grants team, which administers CLIR's active regranting programs, offering support for the entire grant cycle, from application to final report. So we will do quick introductions of the group, so you know who we are, and how we'll be participating today. So I'm Sharon, and I'm the program officer, and I'm located in Gainesville, Florida. I'll be contributing to the presentation and question and answer support. Joy?
Hi, I'm Joy Banks. I am another program officer on the team. I'm located in South Florida and also will be contributing to the presentation and the Q&A.
And I'm Becca Kwan, also a program officer. I live in Southern California in Riverside, and I'll also be contributing to our presentation today. And we want to extend our thanks to both of our colleagues, Krista Williford and Allison Pope, who are helping with the Zoom logistics, as well as our two wonderful captioners from AI Media who are helping out. So our team would like to center today's conversation by acknowledging that as residents of the US, we're speaking to you from the unceded lands of many Indigenous peoples. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge and recognize the original and current caretakers of the land, water, and air here where I live, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseño, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on their homelands and ask you to join me in acknowledging all Indigenous communities, their elders, both past and present, and future generations. May this acknowledgement and the program we're speaking about today demonstrate CLEAR's commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. And before we proceed further, we feel we must acknowledge the shooting in Atlanta this morning that has resulted in the deaths of 8 people. It coincides this week with the anniversary of the death of Breonna Taylor. We want to acknowledge the grief that is being felt in the Asian American and African American communities, as well as all other BIPOC communities at large. We'd like to take just a moment now to recognize, honor, and amplify these far too often unheard voices. So now that we've introduced ourselves, we'd love to hear from you, and we're so glad to see that so many of you are introducing yourselves in the chat. Please do continue to share your name, organizational affiliations, or where you live, and any land acknowledgements that you'd like to share in the chat. During the rest of our time together, we'll offer a program overview, including some histories about the Digitizing Hidden Collections programs, how the program has changed this year, and definitions of core components of the program. We'll also share some detailed instructions and tips for applying to the program, including what to expect in the 2 parts of this program's application process, and we'll have time to answer your questions. I'll also share that we are including a lot of images of funded projects throughout the presentation, and the credits and links directly to those images can be found in our slides, which we'll be sharing.
Thank you, Becca and Sharon, for these introductions. And now we're going to move into our program overview. I do also want to just note one more time, if you want everybody to see all of these wonderful chat messages that you're sending, do change your settings to send them to all panelists and attendees. The 2021 Open Call for Proposals launches the 3rd iteration of a CLEAR program having roots that date back to 2008. What started as a funding opportunity for nonprofit organizations to catalog hidden collections is now transformed to continue the work of the digitization program with a new thematic focus. Under the Cataloging Hidden Collections program, CLEAR supported more than 170 unique institutions with 128 projects that documented more than 6 million items. While the work of the current iteration of digitizing hidden collections is still underway, more than 194 unique institutions have been part of 84 funded projects that have already created more than 6 million master digital files. We're looking forward to announcing the latest awardees at the end of this month. Where earlier programs have encouraged the submission of collections representative of any topic, the Mellon Foundation challenged CLEAR to shift this program to a specific theme, bringing us to amplifying unheard voices. The new thematic focus aims to fund projects that propose to digitize materials that deepen public understanding of the histories of people of color and other communities and populations whose work, experiences, and perspectives have been insufficiently recognized or unattended in digital collections. These often hidden histories include, but are not necessarily limited to, those of Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and other people of color, women, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, and other genderqueer people and communities, immigrants, displaced populations, blind, deaf, and disabled people and communities, and colonized, disenfranchised, enslaved, and incarcerated people. In addition to the thematic focus of the call for proposals, several other significant changes have been made to the program from earlier iterations. Eligible Canadian organizations are now able to apply as lead applicants. This also means that collaborations can now take place between any combination of US and Canadian organizations. The initial application is much briefer than in previous years, asking organizations to consider digitization project design, but to focus more especially on telling the story of these materials. These initial applications will be evaluated by an expanded review panel representative of the diversity of the programs from both US and Canadian organizations. A core group of these individuals will serve as reviewers through the funding recommendations. CLEAR also received funding to contract with an external evaluator who we plan to hire during this initial application round. Because this program's assessment will be ongoing during our current award cycle, we are planning a more gradual rollout of support throughout the program. This will allow us to apply lessons we are learning from all of you and from the assessor as we move through the program. The assessor will be providing several reports, one of which is planned as a public report to make recommendations to CLEAR for the future of the program. At this time, we only have funding for this current award cycle.
The core values of the program have also been reimagined to reflect the new broad objectives and thematic focus. You can use these core values as you develop projects, making sure that reviewers can see these elements woven throughout your application. Our reviewers will also focus their evaluations of applications on these same values. In the past, the program's values seem to motivate the development of collections-focused projects, but we hope the new core values will encourage and challenge organizations to see how their digitization work can be people-focused too. More information on the core values is on the program homepage and frequently asked questions. Though the program has undergone a significant refresh, some core components remain the same. So what do we mean by digitization? All projects submitted for consideration must have digitization as the primary activity. This is specifically the creation of digital representations of unique physical artifacts or objects, while description, such as cataloging or metadata creation and other work to enhance access, such as transcription or translation, may be included in projects. That work must be supplemental to the digitization work. This program does not support further description, manipulation, or migration to alternative digital formats for content that was born digital or has been previously digitized. The original objects nominated for digitization may be in any format, and projects may combine digitization of materials from a variety of formats. For example, books, manuscripts, maps, 3D objects, textiles, various audio visual formats, and more. If you have any questions about what qualifies as a digitization project, Get in touch with CLEAR Grants team.
Next, what do we mean by hidden? For this program, applicants are asked to convincingly demonstrate that the materials nominated for digitization cannot have a meaningful impact on public understanding of people, communities, and populations whose work, experiences, and perspectives has been insufficiently recognized or attended in the past, unless those materials are digitized, discoverable, and accessible in ethical, respectful, and legal ways. It's important to remember to explain how digitization specifically is key to opening access to the materials. We expect that collections nominated for digitization may be in a variety of stages of description, ranging from fully processed or accessioned to minimal or no descriptive records available. Applicants are encouraged to design projects that fill description gaps, using the workflows of digitization to think about how items or collection descriptions can be enhanced, corrected, and created. And finally, what do we mean by collections? You'd be surprised how many times we get asked about all three of these terms. You'll note that the title of this program more specifically mentions special collections and archives. For the purposes of this program, special collections are any kind of rare or unique materials housed in secure, monitored environments and made available to the general public. Archives are unique, often unpublished materials associated with a specific individual, topic, location, or organization that is of historical and/or cultural interest. While the materials nominated for digitization may be in any physical format, they must be owned and held by an eligible organization. Because of the thematic focus, the materials must also have been created by or describe people of color or other communities and populations whose work, experiences, and perspectives fit the scope of this program. There are a lot of wonderful examples of projects from the past 5 years that can give you a good idea of the scope and scale of work funded through the program. We particularly want to shout out 2 projects funded in 2016 as possible models or examples. The first is a collaboration between the Sherman Indian Museum and UC Riverside, titled The Sherman Indian Museum Digital Collection, Increasing Access to American Indian Off-Reservation Boarding School Archives. And the second is a collaboration between the AUC Woodruff Library, Spelman College Archives, University of Georgia, and Morehouse College. You can learn more about these projects and others on our funded projects page. And I saw a few folks from these projects in the chat, so welcome, and thank you for these amazing projects. So next we'll work through how to apply.
We have provided all the information you should need on our Digitizing Hidden Collections program pages. We'll share these links throughout the presentation and point to specific resources available to you. The recording of this webinar, slides, and a transcript of questions and answers will also be posted on the Apply for an Award page within the next day or 2 for your later reference. Perhaps the most essential resource for you as you consider an application to our program is the Applicant Handbook. Combining instructions and insights into the program in its application process, the handbook also serves as a space for you to draft responses to questions prior to adding them to our online grant platform. A view-only Google Doc is linked to from the Apply for an Award program page. Users without a Google account can access this version and download the document in whatever file format they wish using the File menu. For those with a Google account, we've also supplied a link to automatically create your own editable copy of the document. The final version for the initial application round is marked as version 2 and dated March 8th, 2021. An updated version of the handbook will be shared with those invited to submit a final application to the program. The initial application is made up of 7 discrete tasks, 4 forms to collect information about your organization and project, as well as 3 uploads. The applicant handbook addresses each task in much greater detail, but we'll cover a few important points today. Sure.
First task, the first task asks you to confirm the eligibility of your organization, any collaborating organizations, and your project. We also include all of the eligibility details on our website and in the handbook. In the initial application, we do not request any documentation confirming the eligibility of organizations according to our program's instructions, but documentation will be required if your proposal is invited to submit a final application. Of particular note, this program does require that materials nominated for digitization must be owned and held by eligible organizations. If you are proposing a project that includes the digitization of materials from multiple eligible organizations, we strongly recommend you design a collaborative project. This owned and held clause is specifically connected to the program's requirement that holding organizations, including collaborators, that are awarded funds sign an intellectual property or IP agreement. While we don't typically address questions about the terms of this agreement until applications move into the final round, we have provided the model agreements on our website so those interested or concerned can review those terms. Since CLEAR is required to use the model agreement by the program's funder, we are not in a position to make significant adjustments to the terms. So it's best to ensure they present no major problems or concerns for your organization before investing time in preparing a proposal. If you do have questions, do feel free to email the grants team. In the applicant information task, you'll be asked to provide information on the organizations involved in the project. In this initial application round, we're most interested in collecting the information on the potential collaborating organizations, if applicable. So just contact information, really. While collaboration is not a requirement of this program, our core values do support authentic partnerships, which can take many forms. For the purposes of this program, keep in mind that organizations named as collaborators typically are contributing materials for digitization and or are providing critical support for creating and maintaining access to the digitized items over time. The final application will ask for more descriptive information on the nature of any collaborations. We encourage you to explore the applicant handbook and our FAQ online for more information on collaboration. All projects must assign at least one and no more than 3 principal investigators or PIs to the project. PIs are CLEAR's main points of contact throughout the application and funding process. Applicants do have the option of listing an additional contact during this application phase.
The next task asks applicants to supply basic project information. As part of this section, we're asking applicants to assign up to 6 keywords or phrases that best describe the fields of study connected to your project. Rather than using general terms like digitization, which we assume will apply to all the projects submitted, think of words or phrases that would help others to quickly understand the content of the materials nominated. CLEAR staff will likely use this information to help us as we assign applications to reviewers for evaluation. For those familiar with our program, we've always asked whether or not a proposal is a resubmission to the program, followed by space that allows applicants to address previous comments from reviewers. Given how much this program has changed for this most recent call, we also adjusted this question a bit. Since we maintain a standing review panel, we do still think reviewers will be interested in knowing whether or not a proposal has been previously submitted, but we've removed the prompt on changes that have been made. We think this will allow applicants to provide the most space to think creatively about meeting the new program values, while also allowing reviewers the space to look with new eyes on any resubmissions. As you're entering the information on the size of your request and the project timeline, be sure to abide by the restrictions of the program. All projects should request a minimum of $50,000 and a maximum of $350,000. Funds will be awarded in either US or Canadian dollars, depending on the location of the lead applicant organization. All projects must be 12, 24, or 36 months long and begin on either May 1st, 2022 or June 1st, 2022. As you're preparing your application, be sure to double check that the numbers and dates you enter here match your budget summary and your project timeline uploads as well. The initial project details task contains the primary content of the initial application. This is where we ask you to tell the story of your materials, their origins, your organizations, and explain the need for funding from this program. Each of the 6 prompts allots up to 500 words to engage the reviewers in your story. The responses to each of these prompts connects to the core values of the program, and for those invited will be used to start building final application submissions. New this cycle, reviewers will be using a rubric for assessment of initial applications, and these prompts will provide the heart of your proposal in their assessment. The application handbook offers instructions and deeper insights into each of these prompts to help guide your application as you write, and it also has the rubric that reviewers will use. For this initial application, we're requesting 2 uploads, a project timeline and a budget summary. Both are limited to no more than 2 pages. The timeline should include all major activities to be undertaken during the proposed grant term and the names of parties that will participate in these activities. If you're proposing a collaborative project or engaging community partners or advisory boards, that engagement should be evident in the timeline. The budget summary should describe and justify the project costs, and you should be sure to include only allowable costs, which are detailed in the applicant handbook. The program supports salaries, fringe benefits, consultant or training fees, equipment and supplies, services, and defined other costs. It's important that you reference the handbook, as this includes some limits on expense categories, such as supplies and travel. The handbook also includes a complete list of disallowed costs. Included in these disallowed costs are indirect costs, miscellaneous or contingency costs that have no additional explanation, and tuition remission. For the initial application, we have made a representative samples document as an optional upload. For those who are able and have access to your collections, This allows you to share up to 3 examples of the materials you're nominating for digitization and to provide up to a 100-word description for each. These can be any type of material, but note that the samples must be combined into one single PDF or upload. So if, for example, you wish to share a digitized audio recording, you'll likely need to provide a link in the PDF to that audio sample.
Once you've completed all of the required tasks in the online system, you'll have the option to review and submit your proposal. This gives you one last chance to look over everything that you've written and uploaded and go back to edit any errors you might spot. Once you are confident your application is complete, click the Submit Your Application button and click Submit again if prompted. Once submitted, you'll see your application in the My Application space and be able to download a copy for your records. A confirmation email will be sent from the SML Apply system. Be sure to check spam folders if you don't see that confirmation within 24 hours. The grants team is always happy to answer any questions about the application submission process.
Review of applications for the Digitizing Hidden Collections program is undertaken by an independent review panel. CLEAR maintains a largely standing panel of reviewers who have expertise in digitization, digital collections, rights, ethics and reuse, and a wide variety of academic subjects. Their names and affiliations will be posted on our website by the end of the initial application period. During the initial review process, at least 2 reviewers read every application, and a portion of these applications will be invited to prepare a full application for the final stage. Initial applications must be submitted online by April 30th, 2021. We anticipate that all organizations that submit an initial application will be notified if they're invited to submit a final application by July 30th, 2021. This year, we anticipate providing a greater level of support to those organizations who are invited to the final round to help develop initial applications into competitive final applications. This will involve a number of individuals from CLEAR's community, including members of our review panel. We anticipate making the public announcement of funded projects in April of 2022. Because we're also engaging in an active assessment of this program this year, details of the final application are still in progress. However, we anticipate that the size and scope of the application will be similar to previous Digitizing Hidden Collection cycles. Our aim is that you'll use the groundwork of your initial application to build the full final application. It may be productive in this stage to think about how you'll expand each of your responses in the final round, providing more complete descriptions of the collections, their significance and potential impact, and the project design and long-term sustainability of the digital deliverables. We're anticipating an application that includes 10 general sections, which are listed here. Applicant information and project summary will probably remain the same from the initial round to the final. Most of the final application will expand upon each of your initial application responses, including description and content, rights, ethics, and reuse, significance and context of the materials, the potential impact of the project, the institutional capacity, and budget and funding documents. The section that will require the most development will be a full project design and sustainability plan. The final application will require additional uploads, including letters of support from your organization, letters from the communities represented in the materials, and scholars. As we noted, our team has plans to provide additional support for those invited to submit final applications. So before we move into our question and answer time, we want to make note of a super short survey about this webinar. This is part of our program assessment, so your honest feedback on the webinar will be helpful in our future support efforts. We'll share the link in the chat, and it will also be included in the automated message after the event. So now it's time to turn to your questions. Krista will be presenting questions to the team to answer. Thank you, Krista. We'll be doing our best to get through as many as we can, and any unanswered questions will be answered in our transcript and shared to the website along with the recording.
All right, I'm happy to say we have a healthy number of questions, including 29 so far. And a number of people have been taking advantage of the upvoting feature I see, and that is going to allow me to prioritize the questions. So I'm going to start at the most upvoted question. When you say that transcription and translation and description must be supplemental, do you mean that the bulk of the budget must be tied to digitization costs? In my previous experience, the digitization costs are not the barrier, it's the description work to make the content accessible. Who would like to take that?
I can go ahead and get us started. I think that this is a challenging question to answer, especially since the program does support staffing. And if you're supporting staffing, then it's sometimes difficult to sort of designate which part of a staff's time goes to digitization and what would go to supplemental activities. So what we mean more by this is that the project that you put forward should be grounded in digitization work. So step one would be digitizing of physical materials, as opposed to sort of working with materials that have already been digitized. And then as you design your project, you'll want to think about how you are providing community-centered access and make the case that the transcription and translation work would be essential to providing thoughtful, ethical, legal, community-centered access. We have definitely seen in past iterations of the program arguments and acceptance that this sort of transcription and translation work is costly. It just kind of needs to be well supported in the application materials that you put forward as essential to creating the access that you'd like to provide.
I have a closely related question here that might help you help with an example here. We have a small amount of content that has already been digitized, but no metadata has been generated to describe it. Can that small amount of content be included in this current grant, or should it not be because it's already digitized?
Unfortunately for this program, I don't think it would qualify. We are really focused on digitization, and the project that you design will need to have some of that, like we said, the bulk of activities centered around that. There may be other organizations that will fund additional description work, and we can link to the section of our website where we list some of those related programs.
Thanks. So next, can you please expand on the definition of public? As some collections would benefit a specific community, but all materials that will be digitized may not be appropriate to be made public in a more general sense. So does the entire collection to be digitized through a project have to be made public?
That is an excellent question. So for this program, we're trying to balance, public open access and privacy and respect of materials and, the access needs of certain communities. So while open and public access is valued, I would say that almost equally valued is the respectful use and access of materials. So in your rights, ethics, and reuse section, you'll want to explain any restrictions, and we don't mean restrictions negatively. This could be the place to share exactly why these restrictions are in place, why certain materials need to be protected, and reviewers keep all of that in mind when reading that section. So it's a balance.
Yeah, maybe it would be good to note that for this iteration of the program, we did shift the value because it did used to center on broad open access, but we've shifted it to community-centered access. So we anticipate that there's going to be a lot of tiered access plans and differentiated access based on your understanding of community needs.
Here's a related question. Could you clarify whether a collection has to be created by or can be representative of underrepresented or marginalized populations?
I guess I'll take that. Since this, the collection should be representative of underrepresented or marginalized populations. This is a new thematic focus, and it does fund projects that digitize materials that deepen public understanding of the histories of people of color and other communities and populations whose work, experience, and perspectives have been insufficiently recognized. So we'll add that. So no, your answer is it does have to be reflective of those communities, but not necessarily by those communities.
Great, thanks, Sharon. Next, can an organization apply to digitize collection material from another organization or repository if the applicant will be the steward of the resulting digital collection?
I can take that one. Our recommendation, if you are including collections from another eligible, well, let's start here. All of the collections nominated for digitization should be owned and held by an eligible organization. So if you are including digitization work for another organization, we would strongly recommend that you formulate a collaborative project. And that would mean that all of the organizations would have to be, would sign the intellectual property agreement if the project was nominated for funding. It's part of our own award from the Mellon Foundation that sort of requires that structure to this because of the assurances that we're making about the continued accessibility and sustainability of the digital items after the award funds are spent. If you have questions about a specific collaboration or project idea involving other materials, we would recommend that you email the grants team so that we can address them in the most specific way possible.
Yes, I noticed that there are a number of questions in the queue about the structure of collaboration. So I expect that we will get a number of follow-up emails of that kind. But I'll address the next one. Do the colonized and disenfranchised populations at the center of the projects have to be from the US, Canada, or North America? Our project is focused on Indigenous and other ethnic, national, or religious minorities of the Soviet Union and their struggle for political independence and other forms of autonomy. Many of these communities are still being oppressed, and materials relating to these populations are often unobtainable in their home countries.
That's a great question. No, there is no specific focus on collections relating to the US or Canada. We've had projects that focus on Japanese maps, manuscripts going back to the 1700s in the Muslim world, a really wide variety of projects from all around the world. The requirements go back to our eligibility guidelines that the collections must be owned and held by organizations that are based here in the US or Canada. And is there anything else to say about that? I think that's about it. So as long as the collections are owned and held by someone here, they can be nominated for this program.
Thanks, Becca. Here's the next one. In the past, outsourced digitization seemed to be highly encouraged for these projects. Is that still the case, or can institutions get funding to do the scanning in-house? And if so, can equipment costs be included in project budgets?
I can start us off here, and the rest of you, please feel free to jump in. So for our Recordings at Risk project, or our Recordings at Risk program in particular, which is separate from this one, the requirement has always been that outsourcing be used. But for this program, it's really up to the applicant to propose exactly what you want to do in a way that will work for your organization. So you can outsource if that's the way you want to go, but it can also be done in-house, and that can be supported. You'll note in our list of disallowed costs in the applicant handbook and the allowed costs that there is a limit on supplies, materials, and equipment. So you'll want to look really closely at that and really tailor your project to those limits.
So here's a simple one. Thank you for this webinar. Did I hear correctly that this grant opportunity may not be available again in 2022?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, our funding for this this current cycle really only extends for this one year of funding. So we do not have more information to share right now about beyond 2022.
All right, next, can you say more about the representative example projects and what aspects of these projects build on the vision for the new grant program?
Yeah, we pulled out a couple of example projects. So I think that's what you're referring to as examples, because to us, they represented ways that organizations were building really strong infrastructures for their communities. For example, the AUC project, which there are people here who can speak to it much better than I, but it brought together a lot of different collaborators from different sized organizations, and leveraged this project to digitize some really important materials. And I think in both cases, the collaboration is what really stood out to us as we were looking at, what was possible, and what we want to encourage with this program. The collaborations were done in what we think is a really authentic way, that made collections available really broadly. So there may be things other people can contribute to why we chose those two in particular.
I think building off of what Becca was saying, the projects that we chose to highlight showed, and when we thought about which projects we wanted to highlight, we wanted to get a representation of collaboration for possibly smaller institutions that may not have the same resources, where they could build collaboratively and have the largest reach at the finalization of their project, and their project be shared. And when we think about this specific program, that's a thematic focus, this allows us to amplify these voices in a more profound way.
All right, thank you. Next, digitizing definition, clarifying question. Would recording oral histories count as digitizing records?
If you're talking about the creation of new oral histories, that does not count. This program is designed to support digitization of existing collections, and we have considered the creation of new oral histories as collection creation activity that does not qualify under this particular program.
Next, do we have to have all of the rights issues sorted out before the first application deadline? If we're advanced to the second round of the process, can we substitute content if we can't clear rights?
I can start us off here. You do not need to have all of your rights determined before submitting to the program. I think you do need to have a good understanding of what some of the issues might be, and be able to really articulate those and how you will navigate rights issues as they come up. So having something of a plan in place to share with reviewers is very important, but you don't need to have everything sorted out.
Great. Next, do lead organizations need to match funding in kind or as part of their grant budget?
No, there's no matching required for the program. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that, unless people have follow-ups.
No follow-ups, I think. Next, I may have missed this in the presentation, but would you allow analog video, in other words, VHS tapes, to be digitized? I saw film listed, but not video.
Yeah, we allow VHS, audio cassettes. I don't know that we've met an audio visual format that has not been accepted yet. However, it gets into fuzzy area if you're talking about like DVDs that are been produced during the digital era, where theoretically a digital file might already exist. So analog formats are all fine. DAT tapes are acceptable formats usually. So
next, would you consider projects that are a hybrid of digitization and reparative descriptive work for already digitized content? Or is this only for new digitization? This relates back to the question that we had earlier.
I'll ask the team to confirm, but I think reparative work would be outside the scope. Yeah, Joy's nodding, that's correct.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we know at this stage of the world, there's a lot of digital files that exist out there that were digitized maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and you're looking for ways to migrate formats or repair, degrade files that have undergone degradation. Unfortunately, this is not the program to fund those sorts of projects. We're really funding original digitization of materials.
Great. Next, are you aware of any other funders that would fund pre-digitization work, such as processing and describing archival collections, like we used to do? We find it difficult to obtain resources for the pre-digitization work, which is critical to being ready for scanning to start. And this person does not clarify whether they're based in the US or Canada.
Yeah, I think that there is some grace in this program that allows you to apply when you have a sort of good sense of what you have, but might not necessarily know exactly what you have. It's sort of the nature of hidden collections. So I don't know that you would necessarily be excluded if you feel like you're not quite ready for digitization at this stage. We do maintain a list of other related funders on our website, and we are adding to that as frequently as we can find them. I'm not thinking of one off the top of my head. We know that there's a critical need for description work still in advance of digitization. But if you wanted to reach out to us by email with more specific details, we could kind of dig into our resources and see if we can't find something to meet your needs.
That's great. Thank you, Joy. Next, here's a real meaty one. How have your stated values changed the way you call for proposals or design the application materials?
I'm pulling up our core values so I can look at them as I'm speaking. So when we were rethinking the application process this time, we wanted to really focus in on these new core values and make it easy for people to share exactly what they want to do in a really concise way before making everyone fill out the final application, which can be quite lengthy. So thinking about community-centered access, for example, we want folks to be able to take these core values, think about how they can provide community-centered access through a project, provide broad representation, authentic partnerships, and then really be able to share that before fully building out your digitization project. So we hope that that comes across in this new shortened application. And yeah, what else can we say about this?
Well, Becca, I think I do remember that you mentioned the review criteria are also map directly to the newly articulated values.
Yeah, that's true. So the evaluation criteria have indeed changed. So it's not fully the same criteria that we'll be selecting projects from. They're all based on these core values as well. And our review panel has a lot of the same people who will be working with us on this shift. And we're bringing in a lot of new people to review as well, who we think reflect these values. So we're really excited about the opportunity to change the whole process really from the shorter first application through to the review.
Great. Let's take a little bit of an easier one. Our institution has multiple collections that would fit the criteria of this grant. Is it possible to apply for multiple collections, or would it need to be one collection in particular? If multiple collections are possible, could this include projects with partner institutions? So I think here, I mean, there's sort of two embedded questions. One about applying for a digitization project to digitize multiple, perhaps unrelated collections, or also having the same institution submit multiple applications.
Yeah, so I'll say to start off with, a single organization cannot nominate multiple projects in the same round. But there's no reason.
They can.
Oh, they can. Okay.
Yeah, for recordings at risk.
Okay.
We get our own guidelines confused sometimes.
Yeah, okay. So you'll just want to make sure that you don't have the same PIs listed on different projects in this round. Sorry, everyone. But I think the main thing to think about when designing a project is whether there is a cohesive story or thematic focus between the different collections. You can nominate, 10 collections if you want, as long as they all work within your project scope.
Thank
Krista,
you.
Was that thorough enough?
Yes, that was great. I was just, I found a really closely related question, and I answered that one. So it's out of the queue. The questions do seem to be coming in just as quickly as we're able to answer them. So I think it's clear that we're not going to get through them all, but if any of you does have a burning question and you don't see it already represented in the queue, make sure that you do get it in, and we will, one way or another, address all the questions either here in the session or in the transcript. So let's take the one at the top. It seems like digitization materials are no longer a requirement for partnering institutions, but I would like to confirm this. Do official partners need to contribute digitization materials? And I think what's implied here is that a partner might not contribute materials, but would contribute some other kind of support, either sort of expertise or say a repository for preserving the materials. So talk a little bit about partnering institutions' investment and obligation.
Yeah, so I think that we'll back up a little bit and sort of reflect a little bit on the difference between what we mean by collaboration, which is sort of our official term in this program for officially designated collaborating partners on your project, and just partners, which may be contributing valuable resources and information, and maybe staffing if you're working with, say, a university to have student workers or something like that. When we think about collaboration as an official organization working together with you on your proposal, the definition of that is either they are providing materials for digitization as part of your project, and or are having a significant contribution to making your digital assets available and accessible after the digitization work is done. And those are sort of the two scenarios that participating in the intellectual property agreement signature process are important for this project. So think about listing collaborators as folks who will make those digital deliverables part of the guarantee of your project. Now, we strongly encourage other sorts of partnerships, and that would sort of be any sort of experts in the community, community members who have valuable knowledge, elders who can contribute to language material, folks who can come alongside you as advisory panels maybe. And we do encourage the formation of advisory panels that are compensated for that. But when it's involving sort of individuals or organizations even who maybe are not necessarily contributing to those digital assets part of it, where you don't need to list them as collaborators. They would be well integrated into your project materials, named in your budget materials, but wouldn't at the end of the day be responsible for signing the IP agreement if your project is recommended for funding.
Thanks, Joy. So next, does digitization include preparing records for digitization, such as stabilizing materials through conservation or preservation? What are our boundaries there?
Yep, absolutely. We consider any initial preparation for the digitization process to be really part of what is allowed through this grant. Again, it will just be sort of a balance that you'll need to strike in your proposal as to making sure that the bulk of the focus is on digitization, but preparation is totally fine to include.
Yeah, so in other words, I think our guidelines do say something about stabilization being acceptable, but intensive conservation treatment that would be necessary for preserving the original object, I think that may fall outside the guidelines. Is that correct? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thanks for that, Krista.
Sure, no problem. Next, can there be a landscape survey component of the project? For instance, if the grant is for 3 years, could the first year be for the purpose of finding the collections in most need of digitization?
I anticipate that would not be a competitive project for this program. Mostly because of the requirement that we still do have for access. At the application phase, you have to have a pretty solid understanding of the materials that you're nominating for digitization, so that you can clearly state your plan to create community-centered access. And we have not historically seen projects that are anticipating to do sort of collection survey work as their first step fare well with our review panel. It's a new program, so that's purely reflective of what we've seen in the past. But given still the care and concern that applicants are going to be asked about creating ethical legal access, you kind of need to know what you're digitizing. And it also sort of rolls into your budget because digitization of different types of materials that are in different varying stages of decay or instability have vastly different costs to them. So I would hesitate. I don't know that that would be competitive.
Yeah, I suspect you're right, Joy. Next, do collaborators need to be fully confirmed before the initial application is submitted? In other words, this person has a couple of key potential partners in mind, but is not sure she will be able to fully negotiate that partnership before the April 30 deadline.
I was muted. I would say that yes, your partners do need to be officially signed on board to the project at the time of submission. This is because reviewers really need to know who's going to be involved in order to fully assess whether they want to support the project in the final round. So yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, there's still some leverage between the initial and the final. So, I mean, it's not wholly unexpected if things change. But yeah, as Becca said, it's good to have a pretty good sense of what's happening and who's involved.
Yeah, that's a tricky question because could you add on collaborators later, but then also that will reflect in your project plan and your technical plan. And as you build your application up, these things will come into very important decision making. So it's best to probably have your collaborators on board before.
Yeah, I suspect that's right. No letters are required at the initial stage, so you could maybe still be working out some details, but yeah, normally reviewers can sniff out when there's some uncertainty about organization or partners' commitments, and that can sometimes damage the competitiveness of a proposal. So next one, just to confirm, all funding proposed must go towards digitizing materials, but this does not include creating metadata or other descriptions of those digitized materials?
Correct.
I think that metadata creation is generally considered part of digitization.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. Metadata generation is in the scope. I believe the other question we were talking about may have been about reparative work to some metadata.
That's right. That would be creating metadata that would be for materials that were already digitized.
Yeah, but the creation, ingest into your systems, all of that is included as part of a potential project.
All right, here's one about nominated collections. What about old floppy disks or zip drives? Although this content may be digital, many organizations do not have the obsolete equipment needed to retrieve the content through digital forensics.
Yeah, floppy disks. I mean, we have funded projects that have included very, very small percentages of materials like that, floppy disks and physical zip drives. It is the burden of the applicant to make the case that they should be eligible to the program. our reviewers do, since the review or the funding recommendations are made by an independent review panel, they have the leverage to look at a project and say, yes, except we're not going to do that part. And so, I mean, floppy disks, I feel like are one of those borderline, very similar to DAT tape kind of, in terms of instability and rarity of playback equipment. We can't give a guarantee. I mean, I'm not going to say, I don't think that we're wholly disallowed from the program, but it might be a tough sell.
All right, next one. The organizations who want to collaborate also want to digitize some material that is held by individuals. Can the individuals be collaborators also?
I think the answer to that is no, because collaborators must all be eligible organizations under our guidance that we've established on the website and in our handbook. So all of the named collaborators do need to be one of those eligible organizations. And also the materials that they may hold would not be eligible for those same reasons. They must, all materials must be owned and held by those organizations.
All right, next. Can you speak to the value of sustainability in the design of the project, and what does that mean in this context?
I'll start off and then maybe Joy can jump in. So sustainability is a really important component because we want to ensure that the materials that are digitized are going to be around for the long haul, and that they'll be in a secure and stable environment. So that goes back to the sustainability plan that you'll be asked to develop. There's some resources that we can offer to give you an idea of what's involved with that plan. I don't know what other details can we offer. I'll point you towards a really helpful wiki about sustainability and preservation.
Yeah, I think the biggest shift for that in terms of our core value is that the program needs to emphasize cost effectiveness of digitization. And what we really found over the course of the program is that a more critical question to consider is whether or not organizations are creating digitization plans and long-term digitization preservation policies and structures that organization will be able to maintain and sustain over a long period of time. And sometimes that can be done internally, but sometimes it takes those authentic partnerships that we're talking about, where you look to other organizations to help you think about the preservation of the metadata, the preservation and of the digital master files, and what it means to have sustainable infrastructures for digital preservation of those, and then maintaining the access to the materials for the communities that need to, that should have access to them moving forward. So, and I'm seeing in the chat that there was somebody asking for clarification about sustainability. What this program is focusing on is the sustainability of the digital collections and the access to the digital objects. It is less concerned with the sustainability of the physical materials and how you might be maintaining those over time. There will probably be some questions in the final application about the condition, the physical conditions and environment that those materials live in. But since we're not providing funding for the sustainability of those items in the long term, it's not part of this program for us to evaluate the sustainability of those over time.
Great. It's 4:21 Eastern now. We have 64 questions in the queue. So I want to ask our program officers, do we want to go for 9 more minutes and then answer all of the questions that remain at that stage in, not in real time?
Yeah, we can answer a few more.
Okay, great. So the top one here is, could you explain more about foregrounding meaningful engagement with communities? What is expected?
So for this program, I would go back to the core values and, community-centered access, authentic partnerships, broad representation. Reviewers will be looking for ways that you are integrating those values into your project and into making those materials available and letting people know that they're there. So when it comes to outreach, every project is going to be different, and you'll have a lot of leeway to design outreach that fits your organization's priorities and the collection itself. I don't think there's a particular line where we can say this is the amount that's going to be expected, but really just developing that component with the core values in mind is, I think, maybe the best advice I can give.
All right. Next, do you offer funding to host the digitized materials on a server? Is there a specific requirement for where materials are housed, whether they're in the cloud or somewhere else?
We do not have any requirements about where particularly your materials will need to be stored, because everyone, again, has such different situations. When it comes to allowing costs for cloud storage and that kind of thing, Joy, can you jump in with what are allowed costs?
Yeah, we provide, so in the allowable costs for the program, there is room to request services. That's usually where we see most folks list cloud-based storage options. But where we put limits on equipment, it's in the equipment and materials line. And so if you were interested in doing like a series of hard drives or a server or something like that, it would fall within the limits of the equipment and materials line. But we've intentionally left this part broad, recognizing that the solutions that organizations will come up with, there are so many factors to consider. And since we're looking really for something sustainable to the organization requesting and presenting the project, the solution will look much different depending on your own budget annually and the sort of community that you find yourself within. But this is kind of something that I hear a little bit in this question. CLEAR is not going to host your digital objects in any way. We will not be hosting your metadata. We will be more than happy to share links to the collections and materials that you produce. But our involvement sort of ends with helping you get through your project and making sure that you've made available what you've said you will in the way that you have said that you'll make it available.
All right, next. Have you formalized advisory committee work in this round? Are you requiring community advisors to be citizens of the US or Canada?
Yeah, this is a good question. We are not requiring that any project use an advisory committee. It's an option that you can take advantage of to build that into your project and to pay folks using funds from CLEAR. But we haven't formalized that as a need, and there is no requirement that those folks be from the US or Canada. They can absolutely be from other organizations.
Thanks, Becca. Next, if an organization has donated its collection to an institution, but they have not digitized it yet, are they, the donor organization, still eligible to apply?
Can you repeat that question?
Sure. If an organization has donated its collection to an institution, that is, say, a small community organization has given the physical materials to an institution, but the materials are not yet digitized, is the original community-based organization eligible to apply? I think they would be in partnership with the institution, but the holding institution probably makes more sense as the lead applicant, right?
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Because the organization that's holding the materials will be able to develop the plans for digitization and dissemination. They'll be the ones that will need to be the lead applicant. And I think if they're going to have a really critical role in the project, the donating organization would be able to be a partner.
Great, and I hope I understood that question properly. So if the person is still here who posed that question, if I made a mistake, please do correct me by submitting either a chat comment or another question. So next, I think we have time for just this one more. Is the program meant to support creating an online exhibition of previously non-digitized material?
That can be a component of outreach. I think that's acceptable. So I'll say yes. But reviewers will really determine whether the cost and the amount of work that's included is in line with the work that they expect.
Yeah, we usually recommend in that when you're thinking about sort of the division of your budget, the digitization and related description work for that should really be the primary focus of your budget. So any sort of other outreach, the online exhibition or symposia or those sort of and very important, but sort of semi-related activities should be a smaller portion of your budget. So if you're designing a project where the online exhibition is really like the primary focus of your budget, that might be called into question a little bit.
All right, I think we've reached the end of our time. I've just tried to send one of the other question posers a message. Please do look in the answered questions to see if I typed an answer to your question. But we will make sure that one way or another, all the 59 questions remaining in our queue do get grouped together and addressed. Thank you so much, program officers. This was a really rich session, and thank you especially to all of you who came today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Take care.